Hello, this is Brian Scordato, and welcome to the Idea to Startup podcast brought to you by Tacklebox. Tacklebox is an accelerator program for pre-product founders with full-time jobs. Applications are open for our July 15th cohort. That is in New York City. Just apply at gettacklebox.com. Okay, on to the good stuff. Today we're talking burritos, specifically the best burritos I've ever had in my life. We've got the founders of Dos Toros on the podcast, Leo and Oliver, two brothers from the West Coast who brought mission-style burritos to New York and now to Chicago too. This story is a great one. Leo and Oliver knew what a great burrito needed to taste like, but they didn't know a ton else about starting a restaurant. In the ultra-competitive New York City food market, they turned this idea for a mission-style burrito into 17 locations, a fast-growing catering business, and they've somehow kept quality and culture consistent and amazing. There are tons of lessons in here on testing products, building a brand, evolving the business as you grow, on saying no to things that it really seems like you should say yes to, and a lot of others. I hope you all enjoy and have a great week. So we're here with Leo and Oliver, the founders of Dos Toros. I am super excited to talk to you guys today. I'm excited to hear the story of how this got going. So for people who don't know, what is Dos Toros?
Yeah, so ourselves that question. Every morning. Dos Toros is a San Francisco Bay Area inspired taqueria that is very simply trying to bring high-level burritos to New York City and now Chicago,
as well as tacos, quesadillas, bowls.
Totally. And do it in a way that is really like premium and meaning best in class, and also with like strong sustainability and hopefully a strong culture and a really compelling brand.
Awesome. Love that. So where I want to start is where the idea came from. So you guys, it looks like you started around 2009. So I'd love to know what's going through your heads and you look at the landscape and you're like, there needs to be a burrito place, or tell me what happened.
I mean, I really started with a deep passion for consuming whole burritos. And as Leo said, we grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, eating at one specific place in Berkeley, California.
What was it called?
It is called Burrito Taqueria. Nice. And they've got several locations in the East Bay in San Francisco. And really, we were eating this stuff 3+ days a week for 15 plus years. And it dawned on us, I think fairly early on, that at the very least, we couldn't get this kind of stuff, these kind of burritos outside of the Bay Area, let alone, California. We were really just, we love the food and we couldn't find it anywhere else. That's where it initially came to.
Right. Which struck us as a huge problem. Because when you're eating at a place 3+ times a week, you can't live without it. And how I would like to travel and live elsewhere. How will we do that? How does one do that?
Right.
Coming from the Bay Area and with such an intense withdrawal of burritos. And every trip we go on, get the last meal before we left, would be a burrito. The first meal, upon return would be a burrito.
And it wasn't just us. We talked to a lot of people from the Bay Area. That is kind of the thing. When they have been living away or been on vacation for an extended period, the first meal they have when they come back is typically a burrito or a taqueria.
Totally. So super passionate about the cuisine and really hardcore guests and connoisseurs, and enjoyed debating the finer points, of this taqueria versus that taqueria, and the carne asada versus the pollo asada versus the chili verde,
the steaming of the tortilla versus the grilling.
The individual, employees versus each other at Burrito Taqueria, where it's like, oh, this guy rolls really well, but he's a little heavy-handed on the cold items, but he doesn't drain as well, but he's got a really nice, whatever, all the different kind of points that you could dissect. And really enjoyed thinking about that and consuming burritos. And it just seemed like it kind of more and more became apparent that if you could just teleport a good Bay Area taqueria to New York City or any other city, it would do great because there's nothing else like it. And actually, you could do great even just selling burritos to West Coast expats. Hopefully other people would get excited about it, but like at least New York City, there's so many Californians. You can just speak to that community.
Sure. So you're in New York, and what were you guys doing at the time when you were like, all right, let's maybe give this a shot?
So we moved out to New York in the fall of 2008 with this specific goal and plan in mind.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yes, we took a trip out to New York for a couple of weeks. We made a list of like 45 Mexican restaurants we wanted to try. We made it to almost all of them. And then at the end of the trip, I actually saw one of them was hiring, and I took a job, told them I had to go back to California for 4 days, get my life, my bags, and then I moved out to New York in that moment. So we moved out here with the plan to open the taqueria.
Right, and part of what we wanted to do on that kind of tour of all the best regarded current taquerias in New York City was to just understand if maybe someone was doing this already. Maybe there were some really great places that weren't doing so well, and thus we should not pursue this because it's not working. And we didn't feel like we had any burritos that were on the level.
And then it was a question of maybe it's not possible. Maybe there's a reason why we can't get it.
Right, we were trying to convince ourselves not to do it on some level, because there's a lot of good reasons for us not to do this at this stage. We're like, we have zero experience in food service, either one of us. We're not even like, home like chefs, like at all, really.
No family background.
Right. There's nothing except kind of this observation and passion, consumer passion. And so we're like, maybe someone's doing it and it's really good, or maybe there's a reason relating to like tortilla availability or avocado availability or things like that. And kind of just started to feel like there wasn't any good reason that it wasn't happening. And there were even places that were saying, Mission-style burritos. They were saying using the right language, but then they would it wasn't a Mission-style burrito.
It wasn't close.
It wasn't even like wrapped in foil, in a couple of cases. They're just big, steps, kind of tip-offs that it wasn't the same. So we couldn't figure anything. Ultimately, there was no good reason. And I think that's a business truth that often you think there's someone's hasn't done something because it's too hard or whatever.
There must be a good reason.
There must be a good reason.
There's not. And again, it was really the thesis was if this taqueria we eat at in Berkeley was in New York, it was going to kill it.
Right. And I think maybe also part of the reason that it hadn't happened is that the people that were most in position to observe the issue were not well positioned to actually do something about it. Like some, young urban professional who's like going from coast to coast and it's like, man, I used to have great burritos in San Francisco, now I don't have them in New York, isn't the right person to typically.
Or maybe they don't think they are. Maybe they could be.
So yeah, maybe that's why it happened.
That's a super interesting point. And we get a lot of founders who have a huge opportunity cost where it's like they see an opportunity. They're a lawyer. They've been a lawyer for 10 years. They have a big salary. They see an opportunity, say, in tacos or whatever. But it's like, is this really like that leap is so huge from saying, all right, I'm going to get rid of this, 6-figure salary and go after this idea. So I want to know about that. So you were like, okay, this is interesting. There's nothing here that fills the need that we know needs to be filled. What are you mentioned you have no experience in the restaurant industry. What were the first steps? Where we were like, all right, let's figure this out. How do you go about that?
Sure. We started cooking.
That's it. And if you're going to start a food business, start by cooking things and seeing whether or not people like them. Right? We hosted a big kind of dinner party. We were kind of cold on it. We were going back and forth on whether this was even too crazy of an idea to pursue. And then we went online and just got a bunch of recipes for whether it was rice or guacamole or a chili verde pork.
Right.
And then we went to this really kind of authentic grocery store and got these specialty Mexican items, invited 25 friends over, cooked this big feast. And a few of our friends, one of them in particular said it was the best Mexican food he'd ever had.
Really?
Yes. I think he was being a little generous to us at that moment.
Well, that's what we needed to hear.
It's what we needed to hear. Certainly the consensus was like, these aren't bad.
It was a little better.
Well, our friends like us,
That's true.
But clearly, they weren't bad. They were pretty good. And
our first one.
This was, before we've done all this tinkering that we know we're going to do, and it just gave us the belief that maybe,
we can actually wrap our heads around.
It's so complicated.
You're starting to have a little affirmation that this thing might work. you host this party. By the way, I don't think we mentioned in the intro that you guys are brothers, which I think is really interesting.
Right. I imagine a lot of the listeners could already believe that.
Maybe.
So I want to ask that question first before we get into more of the restaurant stuff. We've had, through Tacklebox, we've had founders who are married. We've had founders who are brothers, brother, sister, that sort of thing. How do you think that dynamic helps or hurts?
Give it and take it. No. I think we've been incredibly fortunate that we've been lucky enough to be successful and open multiple units, and that's kind of been the backdrop and framework that we work in, and so it's all positively framed because things are going well. But also, I think there's a deep respect for each other and for the differences and similarities we share in terms of ways of thinking, problem solving. We get a little bit of a yin and a yang.
A little bit. And there's a lot of interactional enjoyment, I would say. A lot of humor and laughing. We had a really good relationship before starting those Toros. Like, that's a good sign. Like, I wouldn't think that starting a business together with your sibling, if you're not actually that tight, it's going to make it like groovier between you. So that was good, a good sign. And yeah, I mean, it's nice. So we, as a sibling, like, you have this exact same point of reference, having grown up in the same place, in the same family, in the same house, in the same neighborhood, going to the same places. You just have so many shared points of reference that I think it's easier to have a shared point of view, or like a clear kind of vision that, seems really sensible to both of you.
We weren't eating at different neighborhood taquerias.
That's right.
The same one.
We're synchronizing kind of our point of view on that. And then also, you don't have to be so diplomatic with your sibling. Sure. You can kind of just disagree more quickly, or not worry that a disagreement is going to lead to a rift in the same way. So you can just, in some ways, move faster.
Sure. The trust thing's got to be huge. I mean, that's when people look for a co-founder and it's someone you haven't had a previous relationship with. I mean, it's tough to get to that level of trust that you obviously have.
It's a good point.
We haven't even thought about that, but it's enormous.
It's so deeply kind of implicit.
And there's stuff, I feel like you end up putting stuff in place to assure trust, or even if you're not conscious, the controls that you're not even aware you're doing, they just have a time cost and whatever, intellectual cost.
Yeah, sure. Tons of cognitive overhead with the founder that you're not really sure about. Cool. So let's jump back to it's now 2008, maybe 2009. And you talk through the decision to open up a store, open up the first physical location. Is there anything we skipped between like the dinner stuff and the first location?
Yeah.
Pretty aggressive nodding.
A lot there. Please.
Okay. So I got that job at the local taqueria, which unfortunately is no longer in business, but, and then Leo moved out a few months later. And from there, it was a combination of all of the different facets of starting a small business and starting a restaurant. So whether it was getting our legal documents and our LLC formed and all that, or doing a lot more cooking. We
did recipe testing every day. Right? That was the constant. We were just constantly tweaking the recipe. And
I remember going to the Essex Street Market to buy more pork to try to crack the code on our carnitas.
Right.
And you actually had a job at that time. And I would come back at another time. I would trim the pork and do my whole thing. And Leo would kind of come back from work.
But carnitas takes about 4 hours.
Slaving away over the carnitas, come in, just take one little bite. It's too dry. And you kind of sitting there shaking. Every day this happened. A month.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we did a lot of testing, and part of I think our obviously being inexperienced helped us in a number of ways, and one of them is we didn't have any pride of creative vision, or in terms of like, I know the best way to make beans. It's like, no, we don't know any way to make. So we'll just try things and be scientific and change one variable at a time, and keep notes on what worked and what didn't, and then try a different variable and just keep tinkering with it. And not think that we had some artistic insight, and also not feel the need to put our own stamp on it. It's like, we're going to make this different than anyone's ever done it before. We didn't feel that need to kind of
no sacred cows,
right?
Except for our carne asada, which is beautiful.
That's
good.
That's good. So a ton of recipe testing every day, but then all the other steps, the legal formation. I mean, speaking of legal formation, I think that was something that got the ball rolling on a whole bunch of intros in the industry for us was Oliver went to
it was like how to pass your first pre-opening health inspection. And we were like, that's probably
put on by New York City.
Right. It was the NYC Business Express, which is this really cool organization down. I think it's morphed now into something.
I think it changed, but there are governmental services there to kind of help you get the ball rolling on
navigate this local kind of.
And this was the speaker.
So the speaker was a lawyer here in New York that does a lot of hospitality work. His name's David Helbron, shout out, and his firm Helbron and Levy, and they've grown a lot over the past 10 years as we have. And he was giving a free talk at this class downtown in front of 20 people. So I figured this guy's he's potentially the kind of in the price point we're looking for. And he was really sharp, and I'm totally on top of it. And so after the class, I approached him, and he represented us. And it's a pretty small network of kind of up and coming restaurateur people. And he introduced us to our first accountant. He introduced us to our general contractors.
Huge.
Yeah. And kind of the whole ecosystem started with that class.
Right. And in a lot of cases, these things aren't super Googleable, especially supply chain stuff.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
But search like awesome, restaurant contractor in New York City, maybe more so now, but in 2008, it's just a lot of these kind of B2B kind of industry players weren't really thinking about their online presence, and so you couldn't just figure it out from your computer.
Right.
And I assume there's a lot of stuff like that. There's certainly a lot. It's probably a through line with like exciting areas to get into business, or that they're not easily Googleable. Right? And it's not a fully built out opportunity.
I think it's probably changed quite a bit since we started.
Probably has. Maybe it's a stray thought. But anyway, yes. Built that network of kind of people and started putting them in place, and all the while working on products, working on design, on kind of the logo design, the menu.
Spent a while working on the playlist.
A lot of time on the playlist. A lot of time on just like textural elements, like tables and chairs and artwork and lighting, and just thinking about everywhere, making notes everywhere, like with a tape measure in our pocket, like measuring like table. A lot of time measuring table dimensions,
chair height. Right. Well, this table, it's good. For if I feel a little far away from you, like get it out. Well, that's 32 inches. It's like we actually are more into 24 inch, a little more intimate,
or 25 inch.
Sure. And then if you want the table height, 29 inches off the ground, not 27, so it kind of gets things like that. Yeah.
And just making notes and taking pictures, kind of building this kind of mood board of like aesthetic inspiration. And I think that was something that has been a difference maker for those Toros, is our just attention to aesthetic detail. And our mother's an artist, a visual artist. She has a really strong sense of style, and I think that rubbed off a little bit, hopefully, where we just are thoughtful and paying attention to design and style as a really core part of the brand.
And how things make us feel.
Right, feelings. And that's the other thing, is like being, our own core customer, and we still feel that we are, really just, we can refer to ourselves a lot. I mean, not that we want to hear different viewpoints and work it out, but we still think of ourselves as like our kind of core customer. And so, anything we're thinking about, should we do this, should we do that? Is this the right song? Is this the right color of leather for the stool? We can just refer to our own kind of feelings.
Anything to touch the customer.
Right.
I definitely want to get back to that. And I remember, and we spoke about this before, I live right near the first location, and I used to go there like 2010, I think, was when I started going, maybe like early 2011. And I remember noticing those details. And I remember there was a picture of you guys up on the wall, which I thought was cool and very different. Like everything felt a little bit different. Like everything was way more thoughtful than what I thought the alternative, which was probably Chipotle. And it was like night and day. And I remember thinking like, okay, this is my place. And I've since gone 9,000 times, but
that's awesome. That's the dream. And like, that's the whole goal, is that like someone thoughtful like you is interacting with those Toros and appreciating all the kind of things that we're thinking about. And like, yeah, these are my people. They get me.
Yeah. And so that came across, and I want to get into that, how hard that's got to be, because first I want to talk about, before we get there, I was getting anxious just hearing all the things that you were trying to put together at that time, between like trying to figure out recipes, trying to figure out legal stuff. You mentioned that it's tough to find gatekeepers in interesting industries. I think that's totally still the case. So you had a gatekeeper to all the legalities around a restaurant, finding the space, all of that. But then I'm sure there were gatekeepers to supply chain stuff too. So you got to get all this stuff and it's going to go bad. And there's like, someone's got to cook it. Like there's so much there. So I'm wondering how you prioritized early days.
A little pro tip on the supply chain stuff. If you go to a specific restaurant and you have something that you think is just out of this world, you can just kind of camp out outside of that restaurant until the truck comes the next time and see which truck it is and which company it is.
Wow.
And you can just call them up and ask if they'll supply it.
Love that. That's true. Hanging out and just for a few hours.
Loitering.
Heavy loitering. Also known as loitering can be a nice way to learn stuff.
That's right.
And site selection too. You're like, oh, should we take this piece of real estate? Like just hang out for a few hours. And you can get a little clicky app on your iPhone and just click the number of people that walk by, or the number of people that walk into the next door restaurant, and just get a sense of kind of what that by hour, what you might expect if you're trying to build a pro forma. And real estate site selection is huge. We looked at 40 locations before we were convinced
Square that our first location needed to be in the Lower East Side. And nothing against the Lower East Side, but when we first came to the city, everything was so new, and kind of the traffic patterns, and residential versus business versus kind of where the subways are and how important those arteries are. Right? We learned a lot.
For sure. I mean, we saw so many locations that were really bad that when we finally were shown our eventual location by Union Square, it's funny, people later were like, how did you have the vision on that location? Because 4th Ave was kind of a little grungy back when you opened there. We were like, it was 10x better than any other location we saw.
We also didn't know that 4th Ave was considered kind of grungy.
Just like the fact that you could see Union Square from the location was like so much more just high quality from foot traffic.
We looked at some terrible locations that we convinced ourselves we wanted terribly. And when we went for them and we
lost out.
We bid against other tender tenants that we went for and then ended up not getting them. And that ended up potentially being...
Right. There's huge swings of luck at every turn of not getting things we wanted to turn out to be lucky, especially with real estate. So I was fortunate. And this was partly also enabled by the fact that it was kind of a recession right then. This is 2008. The whole whatever subprime crisis has occurred, and there just wasn't a ton of action looking into good real estate. And so a landlord would take a chance on an unproven operator like us.
Yeah, the real estate was lagging kind of the general economy and the stock market a little bit. And so but when we were really in earnest looking at sites in early 2009 was like the best time in it.
Right. And rent was reasonable. I mean, that was lucky also. I mean, you have to take a chance to have opportunities to get lucky, but there's been a lot of good fortune. Right. I should add that so coming up with the opening, it just became, we suddenly realized all the design and legal and just restaurant equipment and supply chain, the whole thing. And then we started hiring people. We're like, oh my gosh, this is just totally about people. And it just hadn't fully dawned on us that that was going to be what we were actually going to spend almost all of our time working on after the opening. It's just hiring and training and connecting with and motivating our team and building a culture with the team. That was kind of surprising.
You have sawdust everywhere into having your first orientation where everyone's standing around. It's like, hi guys. It was incredibly exciting, and I think we've been incredibly fortunate. We've been able to find amazing people, amazing talent, and largely retain.
So I'm curious how you created that initial playbook for culture, because it sounds like you were in this to make really good burritos, and you've done that. But that's one part of your product. The product is the space, the music, the design, the people who are serving you the burrito, which is, I'm assuming, not the highest paid people in your business, but they are the ones who are client facing. I'm curious as to what the role of a founder or a couple of founders, couple of co-CEOs, when you're in almost a service industry, what does that role look like?
First and foremost, I feel that you and I are just kind of humanists to the core, and I think we are kind of hospitalitarians to begin with. And we just care about people and making sure that everyone on our team feels included and feels safe, and that we're right there with them. And in the early days, we were in the restaurant all of the time.
Right. If you're they're working and being kind, that takes you a hell of a long way. For like an early day culture building, like it's funny, we didn't use the word culture for the first, 2 years or whatever.
We just worried.
We're just in there working and being nice to our guests and to our team members. And like, that goes such a long way.
Another pro tip, if you start a business, whenever you go into your office or one of your retail locations, whatever it is, say hi to every person.
Right.
Which is like seemingly more than people do. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a food service specific thing, but
I don't think so.
We just heard a lot that, a lot of places people didn't feel particularly valued or kind of seen as human beings.
And I don't think those founders are so happy either. It's like, it's just was not people first.
Right.
And you have to be.
So yeah, we were in there for sure, just every day, certainly for the first period of time, and just there's no substitute for that. Obviously, from every perspective, right? Connecting with your guests, understanding what's working, what's not working, iterating on stuff, like the little things. I just remember the first time we had a little bit of a traffic jam by the cashier because our napkin dispenser was kind of up there. And we were talking, we were like, we should just add another napkin dispenser by the back area. And it was this little tiny thing for the guest experience, but it was like, we can just continually change little details, right, as much as we want.
Because when the guests sitting by the front door have to go back to the cashier to grab more napkins,
right, that's a bummer.
Yeah, that's a big bummer for everybody, for us, for them, for the guests, getting everybody. And nothing is too small in terms of making improvements to the business and to the flow. One thing in terms of that culture is, I think a huge part of it, and I think the foundation is the product. And for us, we started the business because of the passion for the burrito. And that really was kind of the center point, and that was, the reason why we existed, and why, one of the main reasons why we exist. And that kind of unifies everyone's focus. Our guests get really excited about that product and that thing we are focused on, and they give that energy to our crew members and to our team. And then there's a kind of a pride and an excitement that comes on our side, and it's this feedback loop that all comes from, I think, obsessive focus on and passion for the product.
Right. It's funny, you read like Simon Sinek, or you start with why, and it's like there's some profound truth to that. Like there should be a bigger reason, and that informs everything. But like obsessing over products can almost get forgotten. It's like that creates so much momentum and energy for the team, for the guests. Yeah.
Start with what?
Right. And what?
Right.
So you guys open the space in Union Square, and I had a professor in business school who I was obsessed with the restaurant space, and wanted to start a company, and I was like going to start something in the food space. And I went to this guy who was like our entrepreneurship guy in business school, and I told him my idea, and it was a pasta idea with a bunch of pastas and a bunch of sauces, and you sort of like mixed and matched, so you could sort of bet each side of them. And he was like, how you make a small fortune is you take a big fortune and you open a restaurant. And even looking at your location, as I've watched it for the last 7 years or whatever, there have been small, similar-ish restaurants that have like popped up and gone. And it's like 6 months at a time. And you're packed, they're empty. And so I'm curious as to how you got customers interested early on, because it's tough for me to even try something. So how did you think about saying, like, we're going to get someone to stop at Dos Toros who's never stopped there before and turn them into a repeat customer?
Oh, there's a couple things. So, location, right? The cliche of location, it's for a reason, right? The location we chose was really powerful, and there's a ton of people walking by, and it's foot traffic. And at a certain point, if you have enough foot traffic, some people will just walk in without even knowing what you do. So kind of that helps a lot. And I had a friend at Thrillist, is a big kind of website, blog, email kind of recommendation engine, and they gave a plug for us when we first opened. We were like, hey, check out this place. So like that's huge. That's leveraging personal connections and friendship to kind of help you like get the word out. We didn't actually have a sign for the first couple months because our sign maker absconded with our deposit and like closed and left the country or something, which was terrible.
That was not cool.
It was so rough. But even before we had a sign, people kind of just moseyed in.
Not that many.
But some did.
We had the vinyl on the front door before that was cool.
Right. So location, a little bit of early marketing. Certainly we became keenly appreciative of the power of PR at an early stage. Just like various blogs that we kind of got mentioned on, and we could see it just having an impact. And then specifically a New York Times review that we were fortunate to receive a few months after opening.
It came out of nowhere.
It just happened. And we kind of, it was...
The writer was, he lived in the Bay Area for 10 plus years. And then actually played soccer with him. Oliver Kremer. And we shared our first name. And a shout out, he's the man. And he came in and I guess it was his fourth or fifth visit, and he came up to the counter instead of walking out after he finished his burrito. He was like, "Hey, just so you guys know, I'm going to write you guys up. I think this is awesome. It's my Bay Area tacos." And he gave us this glowing review.
And we were like, "Yeah, cool, right on, man.
Yeah,
that's awesome." But we kind of didn't fully appreciate the power. And then he wrote, that article came out, whatever, a couple weeks later.
January 6th, 2000.
January 6th, thank you. And it came out, and the next morning.
No, the morning. So we never had anyone ever waiting for us to open.
Right.
So every morning we kind of come in, we start cooking stuff, open up, get the team excited, and then we walk in the front, flip the open close sign, and then just kind of walk back and
wait for some guests.
Wait to see what happens today.
Right.
And that morning we went to flip the open close sign, and there was a crowd of 15 or 20 people just kind of waiting for us to open. I was, what are you guys doing?
What's going on, guys? Yeah, totally.
And we read the New York Times, we're going to try the burritos. We're like,
oh my gosh. And
everyone get ready.
Subsequently just basically doubled our business immediately
that day
and didn't stop, which was super amazing, super stressful. Also, we were just continually running out of tomato salsa in particular.
It kept happening.
Just couldn't make enough. And it was wonderful, but I'd say, it took us 2 months to kind of catch our breath and have any real expectation or ability to handle that kind of volume without, melting down. So that was incredible. And certainly, PR's played a big role. I mean, we've worked with a couple of PR agencies over the years. We're really always trying to stir the pot with that.
And just to talk about the location piece again for a second. I think a lot of businesses can make the mistake of thinking that they're kind of more special than they are, or that people will go out of their way to interact with their business. And, we think we're awesome when we think we make the best burritos in the galaxy, or we try to. But, we still try to take locations that are as convenient as possible for our guests so we can meet them where they want to be met. And that's never going to go away.
It's interesting because a lot of companies we work with are tech products. They're digital. And that's a thing that we've found over and over again is no customer, especially early customers, are going to set a single foot outside of what they do. Like what you did last Tuesday is what you're going to do this Tuesday. And so you have to kind of meet them exactly there and try and hijack them somehow. They're not going to go try something new unless it's so easy for them to do so. So that's interesting. On the tech thing too, I'm curious about metrics early on and any goals that you tracked weekly, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I think of Dos Toros as probably a restaurant that relies on someone like me going there a couple times a week for a long time. So how did you track, or did you track if there were repeat users, if there were loyal customers, if these were all new customers, and did that even matter, I guess?
It obviously matters more than anything. There is attracting and maintaining, creating regulars, which you do and you try to do by just never compromising on quality ever.
So again, we're there every day, every minute. You just recognize people.
Really,
totally.
But in terms of our digital, how we were tracking loyalty.
No, I mean we had no actual data on what percentage of people return or are regulars. We know just from seeing our guests that more than half of them we've seen before and are regulars. So
we're taking a contrarian approach to kind of data collection.
I guess that's right. I mean, certainly we've had a lot of opportunities to kind of dig into data, and we just have not wanted to spend time on it unless we felt it was actionable. So there's been moments where someone's like, "Hey, well, I analyzed this thing for you, and it turns out of the chicken tacos that you sell, 60% are actually to women, 40% are to men." And we're like, okay, that's wonderful. That is an interesting conversation point, but we don't know what to do with that data. And we've just been really, really focused on delighting the guest to the exclusion of basically everything else. I mean, even food cost early on, we kind of like didn't have that kind of figured out, or I don't know, like kind of staffing, or there were so many things that we kind of didn't understand kind of the importance of, or just weren't prioritizing. And still kind of fundamentally, we deprioritize everything to what the guest experiences, what they're tasting, what they're seeing, and how they feel. And we just, delighting the guest is always the priority, to an almost, to a significant extent. So,
very significant.
Right. So that was our data point. Delight, like Bhutan. You've heard about the country Bhutan trying to measure like gross national happiness.
Love that
product, and GNH was our big metric for sure.
Gross national happiness.
Yeah. Like Bhutan.
We're like Bhutan for burritos.
That's right. That's what I'm saying.
I love that. So then that sort of makes the next part really interesting, because you then start to grow. You're like, all right, we've got one location. It's time to open up more. And what was that decision like? Was it sort of a gut feel thing, or were you always scouting locations and one opened up? Or how do you know that this is working well enough to start spreading yourselves thin?
I mean, so again, the place we grew up going to had multiple locations. So we felt like, okay, you can do a few of these. And that was kind of always the idea was, hey, maybe we can, be like that in New York City and have, 5 locations or more. Who knows? And we had that in mind.
And yeah, really starting with that New York Times review that we got, the business started to work essentially.
Right.
And you had lines of guests, and we're seeing a lot of the same faces. And I think a few months after that is when we realized, okay, I guess we should start. It wasn't like, okay, let's do 5 locations in 2011. And that was never kind of the thought.
But we weren't rolling anything out ahead of kind of proven demand.
Right.
But once proven demand happened, and sustained for a couple months, we were like, okay, this is real. We immediately began kind of thinking about how we might open another one, started looking at real estate. Although it took us a year, we were very picky to find the second location.
We did, and we still love Father Demo Square. Demo? I don't know. It's right there at 6th Avenue and Bleecker and Carmine. There's a little square there. Joe's Pizza is right there. And that's where our second location is. And we just wanted to be on the park. We felt, we were next to Union Square with our first location.
There's also the other kind of end of the NYU world. True. And, we felt like college students were really an important part of our guest base. Coming from Berkeley, it just felt like college kind of cuisine.
And there's, the Union Square subway station. There's the West 4th station right there. And it felt really good. And so that took longer than we would have liked. But yeah, that location opened in the spring of 2011. The first one was October 2009. The West Village was spring of 2011. And then the Upper East Side was the fall of 2011. It was basically like Union Square is going great. How can we recreate that kind of feel where you get hopefully a mix of residential, some office, whether it's the hospital up by Lenox Hill on the Upper East Side, or there's Hudson Square down at the West Village. And so we felt those locations were sort of proxies for Union Square.
Right, but then we opened and we weren't that busy.
We were wrong. No, I'm kidding.
We weren't wrong. We just took us a while to be right. And that was a surprise. Because I think Union Square was, really busy at that point. And so we opened in West Village, not that far away. We're in the center of our own universe. Okay, this is obviously, big news for the city.
It's a bigger location, so it's going to start off doing bigger volume.
Right, and we built it out with, every bell and whistle, every little thing we didn't have in the first location. We're going to have this here. And it's going to be so great when we're super slammed to have all these things. And then opened it and just weren't that busy. I mean, some students were coming over. We had some action, but not like Union Square. And I think we realized we had to kind of like market ourselves. We didn't know how to do that.
I was down on 7th Avenue, house to hand-to-hand.
We did some handouts. Yeah. So we printed some handouts, designed some stuff, just saying we're here, we exist. Which is not a ridiculous thing to hand somebody.
People were not like on Google Maps, like put on that money. This is 2011. Like we literally, printed the postcard with like the.
Well, I remember one of my psychology classes. There was an experiment on like getting people to like take action, and it was something random to like go get information on like STDs or something. It was some kind of collegiate student information session, and they had a ton more success when they did a map on the postcard than when they did with the control group or whatever. So like we should definitely have a map on there.
It was just like a little zoom in of the West Village, like a star,
right?
And Bleecker and Carmine, and then we were out there.
Yeah, and that helped. That had some impact. We got some impact from that for sure. But the bigger, growth just took time. It just took time to build that audience and, convert regular one at a time, one burrito at a time. We use that phrase a lot. And it's really true. Every single guest is an opportunity to build a regular or not. And
as you alluded to earlier, regulars are the bedrock and the foundation of any successful food business and almost any successful business.
Right.
And you develop and you cultivate regular base by focusing deeply and nailing it.
Right. But we started doing stuff too. We said we wouldn't really do delivery. We started delivering. We didn't work. Catering wasn't on our radar. We started catering, and those have now grown into really significant parts of the business. And that was kind of driven by needing to find ways to add revenue and awareness.
Totally.
And Upper East Side, similar, opened up, collective yawns. Yeah,
we thought the West Village was bad.
Right. Upper East Side also was quiet, and Upper East Siders almost even more so, just are maybe a little more culturally conservative. They want to see you be there for 2 years before they try you out, kind of thing.
If they don't try you out, then you're not going to make it.
That's what I say. Yeah, catch-22. And same thing with marketing around there, local marketing. Talking to local schools or
doorman.
So the doorman buildings. Yeah. Anything we can think of. And it's easy. Even now, I'm remembering stuff, talking to doormen, big buildings. I forgot we did that. And there's a constant danger of forgetting hard stuff that you did to get to where you are
not cool.
As you go forward.
And stuff was kind of not, we wouldn't do that anymore, but obviously that was really important in the early days.
Totally. But it's again, the school kind of reference where the first test, you study really hard, you get an A. Second test, you're like, I'm so good at this. You get a C because you forgot how hard you studied for the first test, and then you remember.
I think that's part of the story.
Yeah, right.
So you now have, how many stores do you guys have?
We have 20 locations, 16 in New York, two of those, in Brooklyn, and then we have 4 locations in Chicago.
Wow. And opening number 21 on Madison between 40th and 41st on
a week and a half. On the 13th, we're doing a $5 burrito.
Nice. So it sounds like early days you had your thumb on stuff. You were able to really control and watch how the stores worked and operated, and you're able to make little tweaks. How do you replicate that when you've got this many locations? You can't do it. Was it a couple of specific hires or playbook stuff, or how do you duplicate? It's crazy to me.
Every hire at Toros is a key hire.
That's well said. That's true. But there were, in addition to that, there were key hires, just hiring operational leaders that just had real experience. We always use the expression, we have enough inexperience to go around.
Right.
So
the whole company.
Yeah, we got enough inexperience for the whole company right here. So we can just let everyone else be experienced and actually know what they're doing. And hopefully through some good combination of working together, they'll be able to kind of draw on their knowledge and insight, and we'll be able to draw on our lack of knowledge to challenge assumptions that maybe shouldn't be held, and arrive at a good conclusion of how to do stuff. I think also we just, we didn't think we were better than anyone at anything. Pretty much weren't. So it was no problem delegating stuff. Or it's not I'm I'll handle the grill because I'm the best person to grill and chicken. No, I'm probably the worst at it. So
empowering.
Yeah, right. Just empowering and kind of not thinking we were better at doing stuff.
Maybe I'm just kind of thinking this is, you were mentioning trust earlier. We have this bedrock, such deep trust in each other. And maybe that permeated from us throughout the organization, just trusting people. There's a culture of trust and belief that people can execute and do.
Yeah, but obviously trust and verify is the expression.
Trust is earned.
Totally. But so we've certainly invested a ton in training, right? We've realized half of what we do is in the education space. And so we've gotten really into training. Specifically, this kind of learning management system we use where you make a bunch of video content. It's all embedded in there. You kind of pass tests and watch videos and prove that you've learned it. And
get certification.
Get certified on stuff. A lot of rigorous kind of steps of training and verification that are really important. And the videos are fun. That's a cool thing. You can shoot a video on your iPhone. It looks great. It sounds fine. And what a great way to teach how to make chips with a video instead of writing about it or talking about it. Just show it. And so
a lot of what we do is so kind of physical and hands-on. that watching somebody do it as opposed to reading about it is a lot more effective.
Cool. Totally. So training's huge. But, also yes, we're bigger now, but 20 locations, you can still kind of get your arms around it. You can, be everywhere on some reasonable kind of frequency.
I was rolling burritos yesterday.
Right. Totally. And we're in there. And, we're both taking catering orders tomorrow. And we still do stuff in the field. And I just think, we don't want to be any bigger than we are. We don't want to be any more, we want to be trying to act smaller than we are culturally. And so we just don't want to, we're not ever kind of trying to look ahead to a place where we can be more removed.
We want to find ways we can stay closer.
That's really interesting. I love that. I'll finish with 2 questions, which are going to go a little bit higher level. I'm an essentialist, so I truly believe that 99% of what we all do, it doesn't really matter. We're all kind of doing the same stuff and it all cancels out. But there's 1% of things that you do that drive everything. Has there been anything that has been in that 1% category? So anything that you've done that you think has had just an outsized role in Dos Toros now having this many locations, being this successful and delicious?
Me, I would probably say, go back to what I just said, which is still rolling burritos on the service line. Not a lot. Maybe it's an hour during the lunch rush, once or twice a week, bouncing around between locations, and just staying. That's how I keep an eye on our product and on, whether it's a new pop-up foil that we're using to roll our burritos in, and whether it's 64 gauge or 66 gauge thickness, but making sure that it's thick enough that when you write on it with a Sharpie on the foil, it doesn't break through, but it is. And just the littlest details of our product, I can kind of in real time work with those in the field and being there with the teams. I think other companies don't do that. They get further and further from their product.
Cool. Right. And then no matter how many locations we have, it's just that number times X. And X is this kind of concept, the 4-wall concept of, the stuff, how we do what we do. And I think, staying close to it has been an enormous thing. And you can just verify something. You can spend so much time in a room talking about something, or you can spend half that time just doing that thing and verifying what is or isn't working and seeing really quickly what's a good or bad idea.
And that's the most fun.
I think also, I think we're just inherently kind of, not to use a tech word, but kind of disruptive, because we're just outsiders and kind of embrace our outsiderness and just are always open to doing something differently or thinking about it differently. And to a fault at times, we can overcomplicate something that can be very simple because there's a smarter way to do this. But we just are always challenging the status quo, especially for our industry, of how you can build a culture or build a restaurant or design a marketing campaign or things like that. We just kind of question.
We get that this is why something has been done this way in this industry for however many years, but why? And have things changed? Can we re-examine this?
Right. And we're also pretty good at saying no. We talk about the power of no.
That's another positive area.
You say no so that you can say yes. It frees you to focus on essential things. And I'd say no to a whole bunch of stuff. And over the years, a whole bunch of things, proposals kind of come our way and ideas. And just, unless we think we just can't get away from it, it's so compelling, we just say no.
And you can just blame it on the other brother. I wanted this. Yeah, it's just that guy, he's tough. And
that is very true.
I like that. As you guys were talking, I kept on thinking of that saying when you were mentioning that you were kind of outsiders to the industry, the saying of it wasn't a fish that discovered water. I think that's pretty sort of potentially relevant to you guys. So I do want to ask the last question that we have asked all of our founders, which is if you were going to start a taco truck, how would you approach it? I'm trying to think of a way to make it a little bit tougher for you guys. So I think my
don't worry, plenty of questions.
Okay, well, we'll just leave it then.
I mean, first thing that comes to mind for me is limiting choices and limiting options. And we actually we don't serve fish or shrimp tacos in our taquerias, and I would do that in taco. That's all I have to say about that.
Great. I mean, so right. Be super laser focused. Try and pare it down to the fewest possible items that you're serving. I would go to a whole bunch of other trucks, taco and otherwise, and see what's cool about their service style, their design, and where they park. And
not to talk down what you were saying earlier about the pasta concept that you were talking about. You were like, it's awesome, a bunch of sauces and a bunch of pastas, and you can combine them in any way you like. And I feel that a lot of fast casual, a lot of concepts are kind of going in that direction or have, and it can be big trouble to have. And like when you think about it, there's actually like 7,280,000 permutations of like ways to order from this menu and paring it down.
And we have that. You can just make a lot of different items that we serve. You can mix together.
Dang. Wow.
But yes,
not like that.
Not like that. No. We're hugely about limiting choice and making the hard decision to not have the two options, but just have the one option whenever we think we can do that. So yeah, I don't know. And I would think a lot about parking with this taco stuff. Where am I going to park? Where do I want to be at different times of day?
Where am I going to park overnight?
Right, overnight. Ooh, that's a big one. Where can I find a used truck? How can I outfit it kind of properly with equipment without spending too much money on that? I think you'd want to like take a karate class. I've heard it gets pretty intense out there with trucks.
Yeah,
right?
With other trucks.
Other truck owners will fight you.
Turf wars.
Yeah, turf wars with parking stuff. So that's an issue. Get your Twitter feed cracking.
Okay.
Everyone wants to know about where you're going to be.
I think that's a cool way to think. I think like founders are constantly thinking through this stuff, and that's how you would approach it. And I think that's awesome. Like focused, location, it's all stuff that is relevant to what you guys have done and been successful with. Cool. This has been so awesome. I really appreciate it. I could not recommend. I mean, I'm getting so hungry. Just like when you mentioned the tacos before, the Dos Toros tacos, I was like, oh my God, I need to get a taco. Everyone listening to this should go to Dos Toros immediately. What's the best thing you got on the menu?
We like to recommend the carnitas burrito. We feel it's kind of our signature. The carnitas is a labor of love, and we think, pretty differentiated.
Yeah, and make sure you throw some guacamole on that thing.
And some house sauce.
Yeah, sauce.
For sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Idea to Startup, a podcast brought to you by Tacklebox. Check out gettacklebox.com and click on podcast to see the show notes for this episode and all of our episodes. Also, as always, shoot me an email at brian@gettacklebox.com with any questions, with people I should interview, with questions about your love life, whatever you want. All right. Have a great week.